So this is the 4th episode of True Detective Season 4, and I gotta admit they're finally starting to win me over. If you guys see my previous reviews, they've been mixed to critical, and there's parts that I like, a lot of things that I don't like. This episode has gotta be the best one yet, in my opinion, and this episode does a lot to kind of correct some of my overall issues with the show, which is the fact that some of the main characters are just not very likable, and a lot of them have a lot of negative qualities and not a lot of charisma to back that up. I still stand by all of that, but this episode does a great job at humanizing all of these characters. This episode is a grim, lonely, dark, depressing episode, and that's exactly how you're supposed to feel. So it is doing its job. It's a sad episode. And in previous episodes, I've talked about how when they're talking about the case, when they're investigating, talking to suspects, those are the parts that I like. And what I didn't like was the personal lives of the main characters. This episode is the least to do with the case at hand than any of the other episodes, and it's the one I like the best. There's a lot of drama here, and there's a lot to really relate to, and it's definitely in that emotional space of season 1 of True Detective, and there's a lot of great stuff here, a lot of tragic stuff, and it deals with Christmas. This is Christmas Eve, and then Christmas later in the episode, and it kind of is the theme of loneliness on those days, and it is really something that I think everybody goes through at some point. A lot of people will have this experience of feeling lonely on Christmas, and the concept in the Alaskan area that they're at, where there's this extended period with no light, is perfect for that, and just the isolation of everything and the fact that it's a very oppressive outside world. You kind of sequester yourself into your little house, and that's that. So it definitely matches. Everything's lining up, and I gotta say I like this episode. So, and there's not a lot of stuff about the supernatural stuff that I'm questionable about, but we'll get back to that at the end of the episode, because there is a teensy tiny bit, and I will address some criticisms of my previous review at that point. So we'll get to that at the end of the episode. We start off the episode, Danvers, Jodie Foster's character, is in bed watching the video that we got to the end of the last episode. There's a lot of stuff that happened at the end of the last episode I wanted to see followed up on that we didn't get to. You know, the fight at the hospital and stuff, what was going on there. Maybe we'll get back to that later. Maybe it's not really important. Who knows? But either way, this video they found of the dead girl in the past, that is the cold case that we're now getting to solve. This video of her death, seemingly, is haunting Danvers. And again, this is the humanistic aspect, where, you know, she's a hard ass, right? She's kind of hard to like, and that's even like built into the character, like it's supposed to be like that. So, you know, my criticism of like, I don't want to watch that type of person is maybe discounted by the fact that they wrote it that way on purpose. Maybe that makes it good, I guess. I don't know. It's not necessarily what I want to watch, but now they're trying to humanize her, so I kind of like it. So she's watching this video, it's haunting her, the screams are echoing, and then she comes into her adopted daughter's bedroom and just watches her sleep, because that video makes her think of her daughter. It's sad, you know, and I feel for this character now. It really is that simple. And now we got Navarro's sister kind of stripping naked and then walking in the snow. She's having an episode, and this is the saddest part of the episode, and honestly, like, the most emotionally effective scenes in the whole series. No, this season, I should say, not the whole series. But yeah, I was questioning, like, why is this plot line in here with the sister? And now there is a purpose for it, and it does pay off. So I take that part of my criticism back from previous reviews. But, you know, this is humanizing Danver because she stops what she's doing. I mean, it's her job, right? But she does genuinely seem to care and all of that. So, yeah, already A+ for this opening of the episode. And it got me to care about characters that I didn't really like, and I still really don't, you know? But that makes it interesting to watch, right, when you do care a little bit. And Navarro, too, like, the fact that she's struggling through so much in this episode, it's hard not to feel for her in these scenes. So the bodies from the stadium are getting moved by Anchorage, and the sergeant guy is here, and Danvers speculates that he wants to make himself look good for an election coming up, and that's why he's here helping. He's saying he genuinely wants to help. Who knows, but I like the ambiguity there. And even, like, Danvers is always cutting people and saying mean things to people, but in that scene it works. In certain contexts, it can be funny. So there's actually some genuinely funny stuff in this episode, too. So here, Navarro's sister is getting checked into the mental facility, and it's a scene, you gotta feel for this scene, too. Although, I will say Navarro in general, expression-wise, there's not always a lot there. She explodes later in this episode, and that part really worked. But it's a little bit too stoic, maybe a little nuance would have been better, but, honestly, that's pretty minor at the end of the day. So we found this guy who has similar injuries to people from the previous episodes, and he has a history of getting arrested, and there's this hanging mystery of, like, where is this guy? There's no record of him. He's in and out of the prison system, and he's a German national, I believe, so he's not, even a citizen and all of that. So that is the big mystery in this episode. Here we got Hank, and he is waiting for his bride, supposedly, and we always knew it was a scam. He was sending this person money, and there's a sob story about somebody who's sick and they need money, and she was going to come meet him, and they're going to get married, etc. But there's nobody there waiting for him, and he is just made a sucker in this episode. But that, this character who we don't like, who slapped his son, etc., you're supposed to feel bad for him in this part, I think. And even though we knew he was getting suckered, it's still kind of sad to see people get taken advantage of, even though we don't like this guy and there's something shady about him, right? That is my general feeling on this character, so I think pretty much everybody agrees with that, but it's still kind of sad to see. But that's one of the scenes. There's a couple scenes here where I feel like we could have taken that out. I still feel like in general with this season, there's too many subplots. That's something I got a lot when I was in my screenwriting classes and in just writing workshops and stuff. I would always get that, hey, there's too many subplots in your writing. And I would always resist that. Like, no, I want it to be complicated. Sometimes it really is better just to take out some of the extraneous stuff that doesn't really pay off. And I think that might be one of them, although it does tie in with this theme of loneliness that's overarching this whole episode. So these car scenes are really good between Danvers and Navarro. I kind of like their working relationship. And now we're trying to find out about these caves from the video. And she, of course, Navarro has to be the one to talk to the wife because Danvers banged the husband. And I like that they actually reference, Navarro's like, is there somebody in this town you haven't banged yet? And that was funny to me because that's what I said in a previous review. It's like kind of a meme at this point. But there's these caves, and apparently he knows that there actually are caves. And there seem to be bones in the ice. And also Danvers figures out later in the episode that there seemed to be power, like a generator in there, and then the lights cut out in the same way that the lights cut out in the first episode when I'm guessing it's a supernatural creature shows up and then the power goes out. I don't know about that, but we'll see, I guess. And it turns out that the person who mapped the caves, who discovered the caves, is the same person who was described earlier in the episode, who has the similar injuries, and he's missing and all that. So that's all tying into a similar theme. And of course, spoiler alert, we find him at the end of the episode. So here we got Navarro's sister in her room. And this is just one of the examples of what I mean when there's a bit too much crammed into each episode, is I feel like with this character, especially this part of the episode, being so central emotionally to the payoff and just this whole season in general, I would have liked to take away some of those other scenes and spend more time on this, because we don't, it's so quick. Everything in this show is really, really quick, and it would have been nice to let this breathe a little bit. But we kind of have a hallucination scene here where she finds her mother's uh, dead body under the bed, and there's an orange there. In the same way there's an orange in the previous episode when Navarro was on the search in the ice. So there's something symbolic with the oranges. I guess we'll find out later. And again, it's the teasing stuff that's kind of annoying me a little bit, and that's throughout this whole season as well, where it's just like they plant one little thing in there, and they there's too much of it. But nitpick at the end of the day. And then Hank shows up back at the police station. He's drinking Jim Beam, and his son is there, and they're talking about putting out an APB for the guy. This is where you almost feel bad for Hank. He got scammed, and he doesn't seem to be able to admit it, at least to other people. Definitely not to himself, it seems. And his son knows. He's like, did you send her money and all of that? So it's a sad moment. You actually kind of feel for him a little bit. And then here we got a scene that definitely should have been left on the cutting room floor, in my opinion. Navarro showing up at the lady who she found the bodies in the ice. And supposedly the guy she was banging is Russ from season 1's dad, who was an absentee, missing, etc. Apparently, that's what I read. I don't know if we'll follow up on that or if that's important. Maybe it's just an Easter egg. But she's talking about her past and how she was a professor and all that, and now she's in a quieter place except for the spirits, so she believes in the spirits, etc. And she's all dressed up. She cooked all this food, these desserts, and it felt at first in the scene like Navarro just showed up spontaneously. But now that you see all the food and she's dressed up, I'm like, okay, was she planning for Navarro to come here? Navarro later says, like, fuck Christmas Eve. And it's like she just shows up to eat and then leaves. It feels like this scene was written in after the episode was shot and it was done in reshoots. And then they were just like, we want to get this lady to tell her backstory. I don't know why that's important. This scene definitely should have been cut out, in my opinion. Give some more time for other things. I don't know why it's there, honestly. So here we are at the mining company, and Danvers' daughter spray painted graffiti saying murderers, because she's involved with the protesters at this point. And the lady here whose husband was another victim of Danvers, and I believe she's the lady who owns the stadium as well, so she's high up in this mining company. And she has beef with Danvers for that reason, and they have this argument, but Danvers gets her to let it go in the spirit of Christmas and all of that. And then Danvers is going to pay people to clean up the graffiti, so she gets off scot-free. And that's another thing I would say could get cut out. The graffiti stuff is important for the daughter, the conflict between them and all that. That's definitely central to the story at this point. But I would say the conflict with the lady and the banging her husband, that's just an extraneous detail. But, I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point. Here we got a really sad scene with Navarro talking to her sister. And Navarro's sister says that the room is quiet, but we see that she's lying because she has a coat on and that she's outside. And she's back at this ship again that they were at an episode ago, and then she walks into the ice after piling her clothes in a similar way to their clothes piled by the dead bodies at the beginning of the second episode when they find the bodies in the ice. They also find clothes and shoes there, so there's something connecting there. I don't know if it was the same girls' clothes in that episode or multiple people are drawn to do the same thing. Again, there are supernatural things going on in this, in my opinion. I know commenters say it's surface level, but it's just a total coincidence, definitely. Anyways, yeah, that's a tragic scene, and the image of her in the nude walking off into the darkness is it's affecting. It's gonna stick with me. Again, I do wish we saw a bit more of that, and it was more drawn out. I think it could have been even more impacting than that. But here on Christmas Day, or it's still Christmas Eve, the daughter is upset with Danvers, and even though Danvers took her side and defended her in that situation, it felt like to her that Danvers was against her in that. And then we got Peter's wife taking the daughter away. We'll get back to her later, but Danvers throws out the turkey. She's watching the video. She's getting drunk. And then it seems to me like Navarro is outside of her bartender boyfriend's with a SpongeBob related gift, which, you know, ties into the first episode and her stealing a SpongeBob toothbrush for no reason, being mean. I don't know why she does that. But then we got Danvers getting drunk and watching this video over and over. She notices the power thing I talked about earlier. And now she has an idea, but she's drunk, so she can't go herself. So she sends Navarro and, of course, Peter off to the Nomad camp where they went last episode to follow up on an idea there. And now we're having Christmas Eve dinner, making bread together. And then Peter calls his wife to say that he's not coming because he has to work. And there's that conflict brewing between them already. I do find it bizarre that Peter's wife has her in her phone as Pryor, his last name, which would also be her last name, unless she didn't take the name, I guess. But it's just weird, bro. Why would you don't call your husband by his first name? What the fuck? That's like, what is going on? Don't get that. Anyways, we show up in the Nomad camp. It's very creepy. I like the suspense, the aesthetic. There's nothing here except for the spiral. Again, that's not a coincidence. Maybe it's a cult symbol, or maybe there's a supernatural component to it. One or the other. Could be either or. And then we go out here, and then apparently the guy left after the day after they went there previously, and he's been gone ever since. So something is up with him. And then Danvers drives drunk, despite the fact that it seems hinted at that her son died in a drunk driving accident, and she was so mad at that person in the first episode, but she's distraught right now. And they have an argument, her and the sergeant. And this scene it's another one I could have done without, but it is well written. It is it all makes sense, and the argument, you can see both sides, and it gets into the psyche of Danvers. So maybe it is overall a good scene to have in there, but it's one I could have done without. But still, I still will give it a thumbs up, I suppose. And then we got Hank cleaning up the rose petals he put on his bed, and it's very sad. He's spending Christmas Eve on his own because his son is working. He can't come over the house. So that's the loneliness. And then Navarro gets the call about her sister, and it seems like she can't even process it at first. And then Peter and his wife have an argument, and Peter says some mean stuff, you know, about that he's saying that he ruined her life and all of that because she didn't want to have kids, really. And, you know, I don't like the wife character at this point. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but I can understand wanting your husband to be home on Christmas with a young kid, but she's a little overboard in my opinion. And then we got Navarro going to the facility where her sister was and getting very angry and having an emotional outburst. And you know, it's sad. It's really sad. So, and then she takes it out on the guy she arrested in the first episode. Was flipping her off, and then she just decides to beat them up, and it's her way of lashing out, and just her way of dealing with grief. And then we got Danvers here, almost crashing into a polar bear. Now, I don't know if this is a hallucination. We saw this polar bear earlier. Was it Danvers that saw it? I forget who saw it in the first episode. Maybe it was a hallucination in the first episode too. Of course, we had the kid in the flashbacks, and she still has the polar bear doll thing that only has one eye. So it seems like there is something tying in with the past there, whether it's hallucination, a symbolic thing, or just maybe a supernatural thing, or just a coincidence. Who knows? But it seems to me to be symbolic in some way, in the fact that she's dealing with the grief of losing her son as well. So that's tied into everything. And then Navarro goes to her bartender boyfriend's place, the bar, I believe he is there. I think he lives there. And then she's washing up, and he is very concerned about her, and he tries to help, clean her up a little bit, and he tries to, I think, set one of her bones is off, and he has to bend it back. He kind of tricks her, gets on his knees, and distracts her, almost like he's doing a wedding proposal to distract her from doing that so he can do what she needs. And then she kind of freaks out, and she talks about how they're all alone, and just tying in that theme, and she's lashing out about it. It's an affecting scene. It's really good, and I have no complaints about that. So that's the best part of this show so far. So can't complain about that. And then Danvers is dreaming about her son. And, again, it's just like this emotional space is palpable. So I got to give it the thumbs up. I like it. And then here we got Navarro showing up at the house, and they kind of have an argument over, the fact that they have differing belief systems. And Danvers doesn't believe in afterlife or ghosts or anything supernatural. And then, she's talking about that. And Navarro talks about her sister, how her sister died, and how there's a sickness that runs in the family. And she almost talks about it like it is a spiritual, supernatural thing. Something calls to them and then they leave. So it's not like a choice that they make. It's like something out there that summons them. So that is like a spiritual interpretation of what's going on. And I love how Danvers tries to talk her out of it. And then we get another little flashback to the flashback we got before. And Navarro supposedly saw something in the corner, some spirit of the dead woman there. And then she denies it, though. I think she's just in denial because she doesn't want to admit that the sickness is getting to her. But it is a bit annoying that we don't know what happened in this scene yet. Something happened. They said that the guy was dead when they got there, so I'm assuming that they killed this guy. I don't like sprinkling it through so many episodes. But in the context of this particular scene, it would have been the bad time to go into that. But I do get a little frustrated. Did they kill the guy and then cover it up? I'm assuming that's what happened. Maybe we don't actually see what happens, and they just want us to hint at it. But yeah, I like this scene overall. It's definitely a good one. And then as Navarro's driving away, they got video footage seemingly of Clark, and he's at the dredges that are now abandoned, and they go there and they find not Clark, but they find the Otis guy that they've been looking for. And Navarro sees her sister seemingly in ghost form down below, and that's kind of where we leave things. We don't really get any definitive answers. This guy who's a tweaker, he has Clark's jacket on, so they had some type of interaction. And then he says something about the night country, nothing really definitive. And then Navarro hallucinates by a Christmas tree, and her ear is bleeding, which I don't know what the significance of that is. One thing I wanted to address here is a lot of people are talking about my previous video, how it's not supernatural, it's just hallucinations. And they're definitely playing with that. But in that previous episode, the hallucinations thing does not explain several things. It doesn't explain how Navarro saw the polar bear in her vision, the polar bear toy of Danvers' son. I said it was Danvers' son as a ghost trying to get a message through to Danvers via Navarro. That's my opinion on what it was, because Navarro didn't know about the toy, the stuffed polar bear, and now we see that defined in this episode. That Navarro didn't know about it before. She sees it for the first time here, and yet she recognizes it from the dream. So that is not explained by hallucinations caused by contamination in the water supply, which is another thing people were talking about. I don't really find hallucinations to be satisfying in a show like this that's a detective show trying to uncover a mystery. It just kind of takes away. It's a cop out for lazy writing often. In this case, it's a little ambiguous, but I still think that that's the way they're going. It's either hallucination or supernatural, and I think it's a bit of both is what it's going to end up being. If you disagree, that's fine, but I think overdoing the hallucination thing, it's not really realistic to how hallucinations work, but also it's just not satisfying from a procedural detective standpoint. So I'm not satisfied with that as a solution to it. People are like, it's not supernatural, it's hallucination. That doesn't fix it for me. But also, it doesn't explain the polar bear. It doesn't explain the spiral being everywhere. And it doesn't explain the old lady following a ghost of her dead boyfriend to those dead bodies at the beginning. People act like only Navarro is seeing hallucinations in this show, and that's not the case. So that is where I'm at with it. I do think the supernatural thing is happening. I think it's supernatural plus hallucination. It's going to be ambiguous about which of it is, but I think it's going to be both, definitely. But overall, this was the best episode. It was really strong, and yeah, I actually look forward to watching it next week, unlike previous episodes where I was kind of dreading it. So they might be winning me over. Only 2 episodes left, so not a lot to go. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys in the next video, which will be, unfortunately, the Halo video. We're doing that this week. But also, we got shorts coming out all the time. Going to be reviewing Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I watched that show in its entirety, and we're going to be reviewing that in a short review tomorrow. So definitely come back for that. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.